Welcome to part 2 of how to create an animal portrait. By now, we've sketched it all out, so we can begin to add color. We're going to color our sketch in sections, starting with the background. Doing it in sections makes it easier to manage. If you created your own grid, this is also a good moment to erase the grid lines. If there's a faint grid left behind, that's okay, as we'll color over it. The first thing we recommend is lightening up your lines with the edge of your eraser. What this does is make it easier to color over. It also helps prevent smudges. We're going to begin with PC1059, Cool Gray 10% for the base. If you joined us in prior levels, you know we choose our base color by finding the lightest color in our reference. We have a few different textures in our background. Notice this blue panel on the wall. It's a bit more smoothed out than the rest of the wall and the curtains. What you want to do is apply medium pressure using the scribble shading technique. Don't go too dark, however. You also want to make your marks very tight. If you remember from past levels, scribble shading is using a scribbling motion to try and fill in as much space as possible. Go ahead and fill in this whole blue space. And as a reminder, we begin with lighter colors, so we can build on top of them and add depth to our artwork. Some of these colors are so light, you may not even notice them in our video or your art. I promise they're there though. Now we'll go a shade darker with PC1023, Cloud Blue. Lay it into the blue panel, using the same amount of pressure. Don't go too dark, because we'll blend them. Fade out a little bit to the right by easing off the pressure. We're going to switch over to the blender. Start applying it to the two colors we've laid down. The blender is basically a color pencil with no color. It has the same wax base as all Prismacolor colored pencils, but no pigment. It works really well for smooth blends. It'll keep the texture of the paper, but it makes the colors blend together in a more refined way. Now, the blender will pick up colors, so anytime you go to use it, we suggest you sharpen it or wipe it clean to remove excess colors. Let's go back to PC1059, Cool Gray 10% to finish the wall's base color. We're going to use scribble shading again, but get much looser to separate the texture of this section. From prior levels, you may recall that going looser with the background lets your subject pop a little bit more off the page, especially if the subject has more detail, like this dog and cat. Remember to sharpen ever so often to keep the line size consistent. That's it for the wall. Now move over to these curtains. Fill them in like you did that blue panel. Medium pressure and tighter lines. Make sure to avoid the dog outline as you do so. Continue down and get the couch, as it uses the same base color. Go in with the colorless blender in the curtain area to soften it a bit. It's in the background, so this will make it less competitive with our foreground. Our final base color will be PC1023, Cloud Blue. Use it on the pillow right here. Go ahead and fill that in with scribble shading. To begin our midtones, we're going to use PC919 Non-Photo Blue on our blue panel. The best way to lay this in is to go from light to dark. There's a deeper color in the left side of the panel. Color in the right lightly, then we'll gradually get darker as we move to the left. You do this by applying more pressure. If you recall with midtones, we're adding darker shades into the colors we laid down to build dimension. We can spot which colors to use by squinting and comparing to the reference. This lets us avoid getting hung up on details and lets us focus on our colors. When that's done, you'll notice a bit of a shadow below the panel. We'll add that with PC1070 French Gray 30%. Apply it to the bottom of the panel. Then we'll apply the shade to the other part of the wall. Use some loose hatch lines here. We'll just darken it a little bit. Make sure to leave our dog blank. When doing backgrounds, you can really make this your own. You don't have to match your reference exactly. Using that same color, we'll add shadows to our curtains. We have one that runs down about here, which is actually part of the wall. Continue over and mark the shadow for the curtain. Look for the darkest details and press a little harder. Continuing on, do a little cross-hatching between the curtain's shadows. Go a little further down on the curtain. Mind your doggo. Very lightly, we're going to add PC919 Non-Photo Blue to our curtains. Just adding the blue hint we see. For the couch, we'll get the grays we see with PC1070. It's French Gray, 30%. Go ahead and color it in, a little bit deeper than the curtains. Switch over to PC1024, Blue Slate, and fill it in over the couch. It blends really well with the gray we've just laid down. And finally, the pillow. With PC919 Non-Photo Blue, we'll do some cross-hatching marks over that. This will give it texture and separate it from the wall. The final step of this background will be adding our darkest shadows. We begin with PC 1072, French Gray 50%. If you look at your reference, most of the darker colors are in the curtains and couch. We'll start by outlining the shadows in the curtain. Then move on to creating hatch marks in the curtains. Press a little harder where you see the darker shadows and work along the curtain. The hatch marks are great because they give us texture, while straight lines down will give us the fold in the curtain. For the couch, we're going to move on and use PC 1056, Warm Gray 70%. Work on the darkest parts of the couch. We're going to eventually add black, but we want to add this color for depth. And finally, let's end with PC 935, black. Use it very sparingly, beginning with our curtains. If you go too heavy, the background won't recede as much, and we don't want to overpower the foreground. In the couch, you can go a little darker because it won't compete with the dog's face. When you're finished, check the reference and add finishing touches. A helpful trick you may have learned in past levels is to squint and compare your reference to your artwork. This way, you won't get hung up on details, but you'll see where each color should be. Our artist here is adding extra shading to the curtains. And that's it for the background. In the next lesson, we can begin to color our animals and really make this pet portrait shine. We'll see you there!